so excited about today. You can sort of tell that I made the selection for what we were going to make today because it was not close again last week for last week's transformation. Oh, hey there. Welcome. Will you be baking along today? Let me know if you are baking along. Sometimes people are just watching and they're picking it up and then they make it later, which is fantastic, by the way. But I love to know who's baking along and joining in for the fun. I did select this week's on my own, but hear me out. I selected it because they were both options, loaves and then bananas Fosters in last week's poll, and I am thinking we will eventually, if not next week, I have one idea for next week, we will eventually make banana pudding cookies and morph those two ideas together. So we'll see, but bananas Foster came in second in the poll, right behind Boston cream pie, and so we're doing it today, and I'm really excited about it. Pound cakes are one of my favorite things ever, and loaves, and I think this is the perfect combination to turn a dish bananas Foster, which is typically, if you don't know, vanilla ice cream, basically with caramelized bananas on top, and those bananas are caramelized in a caramel, butter and brown sugar, and typically rum, and I know sometimes it's and banana liqueur, which we won't be using today. We'll just have those bananas in there, and then sometimes people top it with walnuts. I'll be honest, I'm actually, oh yes, hello everyone, hello, thank you for joining. Oh good, I'm so excited how many people are baking along. This is not as complex or intense as last week. I think this is sort of easy breezy. It takes a little bit of time, so we will get started soon. But I am very excited about today. And again, the walnuts, I'm not a fan of walnuts. You can throw them if you brought them today, toasted or otherwise. I just prefer toasted walnuts, and if you wanted to toast them, you could pop them in the oven for about 7 minutes until they're fragrant. Or you can just put them on top of our drizzle after we're done with our pound cake. I am stoked. Today the oven remains cold. Leave the oven off is what I mean. No preheating yet. If you were around for week 5, when we made a coffee cake, this recipe will be a little bit familiar to you. It is altered, I hope, with just one thing you might sort of pick up with these transformation weeks is the way you can play around with your favorite recipes to create something brand new. And trust me, this will taste nothing like our coffee cake. It is a new idea for pound cake that I hope you guys like, especially if you're banana people. I put it up a little late and I didn't mean to. I did roast my bananas for 20 minutes because it won't take 20 minutes, I don't think, for us to get our pound cake going. So if you just have really ripe bananas, that works perfectly. You might want to mash them up a little bit before we include them in our pound cake. Or if you want to roast them, you can roast them now and then catch up later. This is not a very difficult recipe. I would recommend a stand mixer, and I put it over here so that the noise will be over there because it takes a bit to get it going, and then we can prep the pound cake. The rest of the pound cake ingredients over here. So I'm really excited about today. It is the creaming method, cremage, if you're following along, or if you care. So we're gonna start with our butter, and we're gonna cream it with our sugars. And I have 2 types, beg your pardon, of sugars today. Brown and granulated. If you're missing one of them, no sweat. Don't even worry about it. I meant to say that. I'm so glad you asked. Great point. If you don't have a loaf pan, that's absolutely fine. A square pan works. If you want to go bigger, you can. I'm just using, I think it's 5 by 9 inches loaf pan, but you can use a square pan that's 8 by 8 inches, 9 by 9 inches. Yours will be thinner and it'll cook a little bit faster, but it'll taste delicious. It'll absolutely taste delicious. I actually forgot to bring my loaf pan home from the kitchen. I have 7 loaf pans. I forgot all of them. And so this is courtesy of my mom loaned me her loaf pan so that I could make loaf with you today. But you don't need a loaf pan. Absolutely fine. Your cook time will be a little shorter, which is maybe better. If you have a loaf pan and you're feeling like a shorter cook time, pull out an 8 by 8 and that'll work great. Good question. Thank you so much for bringing it up. So we're going to throw our unsalted butter and our sugars into our mixer bowl, and we're going to be using the paddle attachment, and we're going to cream them together. So that is a half cup of unsalted butter, which is 1 stick of butter. And if it's not at room temp, not a huge deal. It might take a little longer for it to cream, but not affecting your recipe at all. And if you don't have one of the sugars or the other, you can use all brown and you can use all granulated. I sort of like that hint of molasses, so I have more brown sugar, but you can also do whatever ratio you want. You just want your sugars to total to 1.25 cups of sugar. So it's pretty, right? It's pretty loosey-goosey. The only thing you can't really mess around with will be our dry ingredients once you select how much wet we put in. But I'll get there, don't worry. I do realize that I had some things off on the ingredients list today, which I apologize for. I said you needed 3 bananas, which is a double batch of this. You only need a banana and a half, which you can throw in 2. It's not a, you can throw in a full 2. You'll increase your flour a little bit. But if you're just joining, we're getting our butter and our sugars into a mixer bowl, and we're going to beat it and cream it together until it's really nice and light and fluffy. And if you're using a hand mixer, that totally works. You can do this by hand. It'll take a bit longer. We have had someone come on and do this by hand, do a pound cake by hand, which I think is really incredible. But it's doable. That's what I want you to know. So how we doing? Let me know. The brown sugar is packed. Another excellent question. I have never really encountered a recipe where brown sugar isn't packed. If you're ever scooping brown sugar, I scoop it up and I pack it by hand. So I squeeze the brown sugar down, and if it makes room, I scoop up more brown sugar. So that's how I would do it if you are packing it. Just like this fantastic question. No matter what. So that's sort of falling, and I just squeeze it down and level it off and make sure it's really packed in there. Otherwise, you're not going to get enough of your brown sugar in your recipe, and it won't cream very well. So on it goes, and we can prep our other ingredients. Okay. So that's gonna cream. And now, if you don't have cake flour, or if you don't have a fine mesh strainer, no problem. You can use all-purpose flour. You can just whisk the flour and the salt together, which is what we're gonna do next. So we're gonna just take our cake flour, 1.5 cups, and our salt, 1/4 teaspoon, and just whisk it together. Or if you have a fine mesh strainer, awesome, go for it. No sweat if you don't. We actually sort of beat the heck out of this, and so it'd be surprising if we had any flour chunks, but just in case. Again, all-purpose works great. If you only have bread, even that, I'd say go for it. It's just changing the gluten content. Not the biggest deal in the world. And I think not a reason for you to miss out on Banana's Foster Pound Cake. If you are using salted butter, you can omit the salt. You could use half the amount of salt, whatever you're feeling. Perhaps counterintuitive, salt actually brings out sweetness. And I think there is a point where it begins to get salty again. And you can double sift this if you're really concerned. You can double sift this. I typically do. We can keep it easy breezy today, especially after last week's intense session. Dry ingredients are ready. Hey guys. And now combine your eggs and your vanilla in any container you feel like. It's going to be 2 eggs and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And hello to anyone who's joining right now. If you do want to bake along and you just popped in, we're creaming together our butters and sugar in a stand mixer, and then we're just combining our dry ingredients and then our vanilla and our eggs. So you are not too far behind to bake along if you're just joining in. That'll be 2 eggs and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. If you don't like vanilla much, you can omit it, you can use less. If you love vanilla, I mean, go for it. This is your pound cake. And we have more vanilla coming in the Foster drizzle later on. I do want to tell you, I looked up the origin of Banana's Foster because I had no idea. if you know of Ralph Brennan, whose family had restaurants in New Orleans, all I think of, if I'm honest, all I think of when I hear Ralph Brennan is the restaurant in downtown Disney in Anaheim, Ralph Brennan's Jazz Kitchen. I love the food. I've never actually been to New Orleans, but his restaurant is actually where Bananas Foster was first invented, and I guess if this story is accurate, it was their Ralph's father, his restaurant, and he told his sister that New Orleans had just elected a new chief crime commissioner, Richard Foster, and wanted a special dessert to be made in his honor. And his sister was like, this is last minute. I mean, I'm ad-libbing, but can you imagine? Okay, this big deal you want me to do, and it's tonight. And she saw the bananas, which at the time were pretty tropical fruit, and they were just sort of coming to the States. And I guess her mom had sauteed them and caramelized them before. And so she did that, she put it over ice cream, and she was inspired by baked Alaska, and so she lit it on fire at the table with, because of the rum, the banana liqueur, you know, it ignited. And so that's apparently the origin, which I thought was pretty fun. So in that honor, we are putting rum in our glaze, but that's optional. You can just put a caramel sauce on top, and it can still be Bananas Foster. It doesn't have to include rum. I can be picky. I am using dark rum. I don't know much about alcohol, but I think dark rum is traditional. And I'm using a dark spiced rum. I'm using this brand. I don't know anything about alcohol. I'm using this brand. But you can do whatever you want. I don't think it matters too much. Let's check on our butter mixture. We're looking for it to be light and fluffy. Oh, and I'm so close to that. Okay. Again, with creaming, I think if it's cold and sticky, it's not ready. And mine is actually super light and fluffy. I'm going to give it one more minute, and then let me tell you what's happening next. We are going to incorporate our bananas and our eggs at the same time. If you did roast your bananas, let's move them to a new bowl now. If you've never roasted bananas before, you'll see what I mean. Get this going. Get a new bowl. All right, move these out of the way. So roasting bananas, yes, they're really ugly looking. They are so sweet. They're so tasty. They have such a strong, wonderful banana flavor. Let me make sure I didn't miss. Oh, good. Oh my gosh, someone else knows that restaurant. I love that restaurant at Disney. Thank you. Thank you for being here and understanding. So icky, right, on the outside, but it remains gorgeous on the inside. So if you've never roasted bananas, and it's a little wet is what I'll say, right? A little slop. That sound effect was not pleasant, and I'm going to do it right now again with this guy. And so this is going to go in as one of your wet ingredients with your eggs and your vanilla. So I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna get up in your faces with this. This is so unattractive, but I really want you to see. So these are roasted bananas. The fragrance is insane. If you didn't roast your bananas, let me mash this a little so I can show you. These are super soft when they're roasted. This is a plastic fork, and these just fall apart. So you don't really need to mash them if you roasted them. But if you didn't roast them, you might want to give them a little bit of a mash just to make sure you don't have huge chunks of banana in your pound cake. That's not the worst thing in the world. I'm just saying. I like getting some chunks of banana in my banana bread. But it's heavy. It's going to be heavy. Now that our mixer is light and fluffy, now that our mixture is light and fluffy, we can add in the eggs. Give it one scrape down the sides, just to give the eggs a better chance of incorporating. And I'm going to do eggs first, and then I'm going to do the bananas. And bananas do add starch to this. Bananas are a binder. Oh, I almost just did it. Let me talk to you about the 1.5 bananas. I am going for the 1.5 because it'll be a little bit wetter and it'll take longer to cook. So I'm literally breaking off half a banana and I'm putting in a to-go container I just put aside. Bananas, leftover bananas that are like this. I like to mix them with cocoa powder and peanut butter, and I freeze them as these little like they're not cookies, but I don't know, frozen treats. I eat them for dessert after dinner. I think it's really good. Maybe that sounds gross, but if you like chocolate, peanut butter, and banana, I highly recommend. And roasted banana, I've never done it with roasted banana, but I love doing that. And you can play with the ratios to your heart's content on that. So 1.5 bananas, or whatever you're feeling. You can go for the full 2. It won't affect it too much. You might want to add 2 tablespoons extra flour, but it's just going to take a little longer to cook if it's wetter. All right, eggs and vanilla extract are going in. We'll let them combine, and then we'll add the bananas. I've got 1 egg in. And I'm dripping a bit of egg. Okay, perfect. And then the second egg. And I've committed to this plastic fork now. Let me make sure if anyone has any questions while I'm doing this. Awesome. And again, the oven's off. If you turned your oven on, don't panic. It's absolutely fine. But if you haven't, excellent. Good job. Oh, this is perfect. And now the bananas. Just like our pound cake from week 5, this is going to beat for about 5 minutes. So if you're seeing some chunks, it's okay. You can give it a chance to incorporate itself in those 5 minutes. We're going to turn the mixer up a little bit, and we'll prep our pan at that point too. All right. And I've got 1/2 of a banana left. And if you do have, like, I've got some banana juice in here, there's no need to scrape that in. I'm going to leave the juice that I have behind in the bowl, and I'm just going to throw in the meat of the banana. All right. Next, measure out your heavy cream, and we're just going to be using those dry ingredients we measured out, so you can grab a spoon. And our heavy cream today is 1/2 cup, and we've got that flour and that salt already prepared. 1/2 cup flour, dry ingredients. I sort of like being this far away. Like, I feel like I'm not like half in your view and awkwardly staring at you with one eye. If your mixture looks, the only way I can describe it is broken, like it's split maybe, that's okay. That's completely expected. It smells so, I love bananas though. It smells so wonderfully of bananas. My husband does not like bananas in his dessert. But he'll eat them. He'll like eat them after a run. Like, I'm not just gonna eat a banana. Like, put that in bread. Let's get a cinnamon crumble going. Then I'll eat that banana. All right. And you can turn it back on. We're gonna add 1/2 of our flour, just by the spoonful. We can estimate. And then we're gonna pour all our cream in at once, add the other 1/2 of the flour, and then we're gonna beat it for 5 minutes. All right. Low is good. The flour has a tendency to come right back at you. A little bit. Something we can do. I think Bananas Foster typically has cinnamon. I decided to omit it in this. I just felt like it might overpower everything. So you can throw a little bit of cinnamon in here, or maybe 1/2 teaspoon. You can add cinnamon to the drizzle later on, or you can omit it like I'm doing today. Did you see that? I had a little bit of backsplash. I even have a guard that I'm not using right now. And we're going for 1/2 our flour, so 3/4 of a cup if you're keeping track. I am a believer that if you have to put banana in something, roast it. I can't think of a time you can't roast a banana. And I have to admit, I do keep my banana bread recipe very close to the vest. I think because it took me so long to figure out. But I can tell you that I roast the bananas in that too, just so you know. All right, let's do the cream now. And don't, if you've got flour on the sides, don't panic. It's okay if you want to stop it and scrape down the sides. We're going to do that once everything is incorporated anyways. And do this slowly, do the cream slowly. It might come back at you. I this is a laid back recipe for everyone. And I tell you, I'm not complaining that I'm gonna have some of this for dessert tonight. But because it's pound cake, well, because I called it a loaf, I feel like it's very acceptable to have it for breakfast. Now, who am I kidding? Like lemon pound cake, I'd eat that for breakfast any day. All right, my cream is in. Just make sure it's incorporated and finish off your dry ingredients. So, that flour came right back at me. Maybe I have a lower, do I have a, this mixture is so good. No, I don't have a lower setting. Does anyone else have a very temperamental flour today? Now it's teasing me. This is just punishment for not putting the guard on. It just feels like one more thing you have to clean. But instead, I have to clean the counter and the floor and my apron and my arms. There's got to be a word for it. Maybe laziness is just the word, but where it's to your own detriment no matter what. All right, almost done with my flour. Well, now it's doing fine. I need to be a little closer. All right. And take a second to scrape down the sides of your bowl. Okay. And again, if you don't have a loaf pan, no worries. Make this sucker in. I mean, if you want it sort of thicker, make it in your smallest square pan, but I wouldn't recommend going as big as a 9 by 13 inch pan, but if that's all you have, go for it. Okay. I'll just get that off this side. And now we're gonna beat this for 5 minutes. I'm gonna set a timer for us, and we're gonna turn it up to medium. It's gonna keep getting higher. Okay. Now I'll come back over here. Pan preparation, we're gonna grease it and we're gonna flour it. Doesn't matter what type of flour you use. Because I think cake flour is more difficult to come by, especially now, I'm gonna flour it with all-purpose, whatever you have. And you can use a stick of butter and just rub it around here, shortening any sort of grease. This is just easiest, so I'm gonna spray it, and then we're gonna tap it around. To make sure the flour gets on every surface evenly. Woo! Grease that puppy. Okay. So now for your flour, just dump a bunch in and then we'll knock it back out. But know that you can't really reuse this. You've got your flour in your grease and it won't be usable. So put as much as you think it'll take and then it's okay. It's like tossing salt over your sugar. We're just, I mean, yes, shoulder. It's salt, right? Is it sugar? It's like I had a brain fart and said sugar at the end. We're just tossing our flour into the garbage. So I'm just doing this and then tapping it to cover every surface. And I'm doing it over my dry ingredients bowl to save myself a mess. Thank you again for the loaf pan. Oh, sorry if we lost Facebook for a second. Let me know if you guys can still hear me, see me. I had maybe a bad connection for a second, and it had to reconnect. All right. Perfect. I've got one, and then if you left it in a bowl, you can dump that back in, because I've got one corner that needs a little more love. Excellent. Okay. Perfect. And then I knock it. Ready? It's a little bit of a loud bang. And that just makes sure that we've got it all over, but it's a thin layer. Excellent. Okay. So let's talk about what happens in this oven. This is a long bake time. We're gonna put it into our pans, and then we're gonna put it in a cold oven, and we're going to start the oven at 350 degrees. And it'll take about an hour and 15 minutes. I recommend check in a half hour and see if it looks like it's maybe over halfway. It will rise. There's no leavening agent, but what we're doing right now is we're incorporating a lot of air into it, and so it's actually going to look absolutely gorgeous when we're pouring it out. You'll see what I mean. So it's going to rise, and it's going to brown, and I think there's a moment where it's going to be brown, and it's not going to be done. And so you need to be very weary of undercooking this, because if you undercook it, though typically it's not so bad, it's inedible or anything like that, it'll fall a little bit in the middle. But you also don't want to overcook it, so there is going to be this sweet spot. Use a toothpick, put it directly in the center, don't do it near the edges, and if it's at all wet, it will sink. So you want that toothpick to come out completely clean of wetness, but it'll have a few crumbs attached to it. That is the sweet spot. I know. Now, we have 2 more minutes on our beating, so let me find, there we go, tape and tell you about our sauce. So let's move this guy aside and talk about our drizzle. Now, this is the easiest thing on the planet. Walnuts aside, we're literally going to throw all of this into a pan and we're going to melt it together. It's the easiest sauce on earth. It has nothing to do with our pound cake until that pound cake is cooked. So what I'm recommending is we prep it, we get it cooked, and then it can sit while the pound cake is in the oven, and this sauce goes on when the pound cake comes out of the oven. You still want it warm. It's going to absorb it a little bit. It's really going to sink in, and it's so luscious and wonderful. Just get excited. And you don't have to pour it all on. I like to pour it while it's still in its mold, in its loaf pan, but I might do half in the loaf pan, and then once I unmold it, you have to let it cool for maybe a half hour, maybe drizzle more, and that way it'll go down the sides as well and be just amazing. So lots and lots of options. We'll make this once we get our pound cake into the oven, and then we'll do 25 more seconds, and then we'll say goodbye, and I'll update you with what mine is looking like. Okay. Oh, it's beautiful, you guys. And there are some chunks of banana, which is great. I don't think banana extract is ever a good idea. My brother tells me that the reason banana extract is so sort of unpleasant to basically everyone. I mean, tell me if you're a banana extract fan. I'd love to meet someone who really likes it, because the extract formula was based on a what is that called? It was based on a variety of banana that no longer exists. And so that's not the banana flavor we're used to anymore. You know, we're used to whatever bananas I just roasted today in the oven. So why can't we just make a new extract? Is that really difficult? I don't know. How do you make extract? I mean, I understand if you want to make your own vanilla extract, check out Ina Garden. She makes her own, and it's just like this massive thing in her pantry. You just have to put vanilla bean, quite a few, so it's an investment, but you can use it forever. Put vanilla bean in vodka, and then let it sit for 6 months, and you can start using it. And I think you can add more vodka and add more vanilla beans, and you've got this, it's like starter dough. You've got this extract you can use forever. Okay, so this is what mine looks like, and I'm just so pleased. Oh, yes! So if you had your oven on, which, by the way, not a huge problem. Something you can do, you can wait and cool the oven. You can put your batter in your mold in the fridge for maybe a half hour and then put it into a preheated oven. Absolutely an option. Not the end of the world if your oven is on. And if it's on and you just want it, you can put it in the oven when it's warm. The rise is a little bit different, but it tastes really good. So one thing you can do in that spirit is you can put it in its mold and put it in the fridge overnight, and then pop it into a preheated oven. So if you're making it today, you don't want it today, not a problem. In that case, I would preheat the oven and put it in from the fridge cold right into the oven. So if your oven's on, you can just put your batter into your mold and put the whole thing into the fridge. You might actually be able to freeze this and put it in the fridge overnight. And then in a half hour, put it in a preheated oven. So it's totally up to you. Lots of options. Something totally that you can work around. Totally fine. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Everyone preheated their ovens. No, but again, not a huge deal. Pour your batter right into your loaf pan or whatever pan you're using. Stick it in the fridge and then pull it out in a half hour and bake it in a hot oven. And it's sort of, I had to test it because to me I was like, why wouldn't that work if the batter is cold and the oven is warming it up slowly still? It does work. I'm telling you, it does work. So no fretting. That is absolutely fine. Now, again, this is the prepared pan. It is greased. It is floured. Okay. Get every little bit out of there. And no topping on this one because our topping comes afterwards. All right, and just spread it out. Great time to use an offset. I think both of mine are in the, why are both, I don't know where my offsets are. They're not on my magnet. Just spread it out so it is even bake, and then pop it into the oven and we'll turn the oven on. Heck, my oven's just a little bit warm from roasting the bananas, so I'm in your boat too. Okay, next, as I move aside all our pound cake stuff, we'll get on this sauce and then we will say goodbye and we'll compare notes on how things went. Any size pan. Actually, this is a little large, but it'll do. We're literally throw everything into this pan. We're going to turn it on. So, 1/4 cup unsalted butter, which is half a stick, and then 2 tablespoons of basically everything except vanilla extract. And you can mess with this too if you really want brown sugar. Go for all brown sugar. Omit the rum if you're not feeling like rum. Actually, rum always reminds me of one friend, which sounds like a really bad way to start a story, but it's because I don't have very many big drinking friends. But my husband again really likes mixology, and she doesn't really drink at all, but if she does, it's usually rum, and so my husband always makes her like a special rum drink. And I think she likes this dark spiced rum too. If you don't have heavy cream, a different dairy should work well. Heavy cream's a little thicker, so you might want to, I just got really heavy-handed on my heavy cream. You might want to use a little less of that dairy. I might do half the, or no, I'm gonna go for all the rum. I think my husband would like it if I used all the rum. So I'm gonna do it. And if you recognize this at all, it's basically a caramel sauce. Which is classic. That's classic Bananas Foster. Now I think it's funny, we've been to Boston and now we've been to New Orleans, and when we do banana pudding, I'm pretty sure that's typically Texas, though I don't know its origin. So we're running around a bit. And I don't see why you couldn't use a different extract if you aren't interested in Bananas Foster, but you still want to make this pound cake. You could probably throw an almond extract. Okay. And now I'll leave that up. I'm just turning, just in case, because I know it's quite a bit. I'm just turning on my stovetop. Make sure you use a heat-proof spatula, and I'm going to melt it together. And then I'm going to boil it for about a minute. And on the one hand, that's supposed to burn off the alcohol. On another, that's we're bringing the sugar up to a bit of a higher temperature. And this will probably thicken as it sits and waits for the pound cake. All you're going to do is just put it right back on the stove. But I'll show you my consistency too. As a do as I say, not as I do situation. I should have cubed my butter up more. So if you haven't gotten your butter in, I just cut my half a stick in half. But cubes, it'll melt faster if you put in smaller cubes. All right, just checking. How are we doing? I can leave this. Yes, it'll be 350. Thank you for anyone who ever answers someone else's questions and you know the answer. If I miss it, I want to make sure everyone's got it. All right, I'm just mixing this up. I didn't think about this. If you don't have a toothpick, my gosh, if you have a plastic knife, I do not know why. I swear that's a thing. I learned that with brownies. You can't use, why is this? Someone tell me if you know why. I think either metal knives come out always clean or always sticky so that you can't really tell if something's done. But is this an urban legend? As I'm saying this, it doesn't make much sense to me. But if you have a plastic knife, you can test with that. I think a sharp knife is best. Any sort of sharp knife. That doesn't create a massive sort of puncture wound in the top of your pound cake. Another way to test, putting pressure just with your hand on the center of the pound cake. And if it feels wet or if it's giving too much, it's not springing back, it's not done yet. All right, my butter's almost melted. I'm hoping everyone is with me, and let me know if you're not. I'm turning my temperature up on the stovetop because I want to bring this to a boil just for 1 minute. And let me make sure no one has any questions. Oh, yes, absolutely. It'll be about an hour in a loaf pan, hour and 15 minutes. You want to check, which I was sort of just getting at, doneness. I recommend a toothpick if you have it. It shouldn't be wet at all. If the toothpick is wet in any way, it might fall a little in the middle and still taste absolutely delicious. Just so you know, just to be honest with you. If you're using something larger than a loaf pan, than a 9 by 5 inch, 8 by 4 inch loaf pan, it's gonna be a little bit less. My guess is 45 minutes. Everyone check theirs, which I didn't set a timer. Hello, it's like you guys are reminding me. Everyone check theirs at the 30-minute mark and you'll get a better idea of what's going on. Also, I'm always a big fan of turning that pan around, making sure each part doesn't sit in one hot spot by itself so we get a more even bake. All right, I'm on the verge of, there we go, there come the bubbles. I'm gonna cook for 1 minute, and this isn't really a science, but I do wanna burn that alcohol off just to leave the rum flavor behind. Because it's flambéed, you know. And I'd stir this, oh, this smells wonderful. If you want this to be more like a salted caramel, throw some salt in after this 1 minute. I'd say probably a quarter of a teaspoon max. This isn't that much liquid. Hello, gorgeous caramel sauce. And this probably is gonna thicken as it sits. Depends how hot everything is around you. And the oven's on underneath me here. So you're just going to put it on the stove and stir it till it's liquid again and pour it right over that pound cake. And it's gonna be delicious. Oh, this looks so good. 8 seconds. All right, and I'll come show you what mine looks like. Hello, heat. Just saucy and wonderful. Oh, all right, don't leave that on the heat. Definitely pull that guy off the heat. And so you're just gonna heat that mixture up once your pound cake comes out. It's going to take about an hour. Again, every oven's different. All your pans might be different sizes. Use something to poke in the center or press down on the center and see if it's still wet. And if it's wet, if it falls, it's not a big deal at all. Once it's out, my plan, you can do this how you want. You can let it cool for a half hour and then knock it out of the pan. Or if you're not knocking it out of the pan, leave it in the pan and as it's warm, pour that caramel sauce on. I'm doing half and half. I'm going to pour half of my caramel sauce onto the warm loaf because I want it to sink in a little bit and saturate it. I'm not sure this is a dessert you should eat with your hands, which is a good thing. I'm saying it's that delicious. And then I'm going to take it out of the pan and I'm going to pour it more so that it drizzles down the side too, just for aesthetics. I think I'm going to like the way that looks. But otherwise, guys, we're just waiting for these guys to cook. So leave your caramel off heat. You can just put it right back on the heat to loosen it up again and get it to whatever consistency you're looking for. If you want it thicker and you don't want it to saturate the loaf, wait a half hour, just don't burn yourself. Knock that loaf out of the pan and pour it on then. You don't have to saturate it if you don't want to. It's sort of imbibing it with, which is like what you do on, it's a lot of, if you make French, a lot of European desserts actually, you imbibe, that's a lot of alcohol gets into European desserts, using like a pastry brush. You brush on coffee liqueur, for instance, and let that soak into the cake before you ever layer it or top it or anything. So totally up to you how you do this part. Yes, I can show the sauce again, and now it's not bubbling. And mine's just this sort of, it's borderline thick caramel sauce. It's gonna be, let me tip it back so you can see it come down. Ooh, look at that. Oh, it's gonna be so delicious. And if you want to see if you're interested in salting this, take a taste. Don't burn yourself, it's hot sugar, but take a taste and see if you want to incorporate some salt into it. I'm not a huge fan of salted caramels to begin with, so I'm not going to venture down that road. But I will update you guys with a photo of what the cooked pound cake looks like. And if you're really, really curious, it'll come out a little bit differently. Head to week 5's video on the site, which is beurrepastryshop.com/blog, or on Instagram, on IGTV, on Facebook, on YouTube. There's a YouTube channel. Head to week 5 and just like scroll past everything to hit what the pound cake looks like when it comes out. It'll be a little bit different. The banana's adding some weight and some moisture, but you can see that it's pretty. I mean, it gets pretty dark, but that's when it's cooked. So that's what we're looking for today. Oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you for joining. I'm really excited about this week. It smells heavenly. I'm already impatient. Turn yours at the half-hour mark. For anyone who's a Beurre Box subscriber, Tuesday. They're coming out Tuesday. It's August already. I'm super excited about this box. Really, really excited. If you want to subscribe, last Tuesday was the deadline, but you can sign up at any time and you'll just get the next month's box. In September is a seasonal box for all the seasonal subscribers, so that's going to be a very fun box. Fall is coming, you guys, and I'm stoked about it. Oh no, it's fine if you had it on. I totally understand that. If you turned your oven on to do the bananas, which makes sense, if you put your pound cake into the fridge, I guess either way, if you put your pound cake into the fridge, even for 20 minutes, you can chill it out a little bit. You don't even have to wait for your oven to cool, because I think it'll take longer for your oven to cool than for your banana pound cake batter to chill out, because that's already at room temp. So just throw your batter into the fridge and wait 20 minutes, 30 minutes. It'll chill out a little bit. You'll get a better rise if you do that. And if you don't feel like doing any of that, it is not a disaster to just pop your pound cake into the oven right away. It's going to taste just as good, trust me. Especially because you put all this time and energy into making it taste delicious, and if it smells like this, don't even worry about it. But thank you guys so much for joining. I have an idea for next week that I'm really excited about, but I have to check on one thing. And then eventually I really want to make those banana pudding cookies. I like banana. I know it's a lot of bananas. We haven't worked with banana much. I don't actually sell very many. Just the banana bread, I think, is the only banana product that I sell. If you wanted to see the menu, head to beurrepastryshop.com, and under the pastry shop you can see what I ship nationwide, what I deliver locally, and the subscription boxes are shipped. So if you want a box and you're out of state, I ship those. Those are always prepared for shipping, and I ship them fast so you can get them fresh. I don't want you to have to wait 2 weeks to get cookies that are now stale. So thank you so much for joining. This has been fun. If you aren't an email subscriber and you missed the new product that launched last Monday, I don't think I've posted it on social media yet, but you can see them on the site. They're very fun cookie dough brownies, a brownie base, this rich brownie base with 2 different types of edible cookie dough on top, and I must say, they're delicious. I'm just gonna say that. I'm biased, and I think you all know that. But this was very fun. We made it in time. Everything's fine, and I'll update you with how everything looks. So I will see you guys next week.